Welcome to the Building Design Primetime Podcast, focused on providing valuable information for anyone looking to undertake a new build or extension project. We'll share our tips, tricks and stories from a building designer's perspective.
Welcome to the Building Design Primetime Podcast. Once again, we welcome Frank Geskus, building designer, and we've also got a special guest on today. Welcome Jarrod from Survey Plus. Today we're going to be talking about engineering surveying. Now, Jarrod, can you explain a little bit about engineering surveying and how it works? Because I know there are so many different types of surveying out there and it can be a little bit confusing. So where do you start and what do you do, Jarrod?
Okay, well, I'm an engineering surveyor, so we do topographic surveys of sites for building designers and engineers. So that shows them the topography of the land and shows them where any structures or any features on the site are, so they can then design from that, create a site plan, elevations and so forth. We also locate services on the site, so they're shown normally at the lowest point, sewer and stormwater. And mostly the communications are at the front, so we locate those as well, where the driveway apron is and the road levels as well, so we can make sure cars can enter and exit the property successfully.
Remember when we spoke about connections?
Yes.
That's why I need Jarrod.
There you go.
So he goes, finds them. Sometimes they're buried. The old ones, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're a real pain, some of them. So the new ones, you got the PVC caps and hopefully they're painted the right colour.
No, well, down in Hobart, we don't get them painted. We just have lock connections. So normally a stormwater is 100 mil and sewer is 90 mil. So they can be confused because there's only 10 mil difference between them. But that's the way we normally identify them ourselves, by the different size pipes. A lot of stormwaters now are going to 150, so it's very obvious between a 90 and a 150, but between 100 and 90 it can be confusing.
And you mentioned about topography before, like what does that actually mean?
So topography is the way the land forms. So whether it's on a continuous slope, whether it's got level pads over the site, that's the topography of the land. It shows where open drains are, tops and toes of banks. It's more or less, we're creating a copy, a photocopy of the site, which you can look at it from plan view, but also from elevation view from side on. It shows them how much fall from the back of the block to the front of the block and from side to side. So
in 3D it looks really cool too.
And I imagine it'll be fairly important when it comes to designing the dwelling. How does that tie into, say, with the building designers as well?
Oh, it's essential. We need to understand the site that we're designing to. Can you get the car in? We've seen a few sites, haven't we, Jarrod, over the time, where we're going, wow, they're going to smash the nose, their underside the front of the car, or they're going to leave their exhaust at the top, or vice versa. You can see with all gouge marks in the concrete and stuff, and that's just poor design. That's why we get the surveys done to a high level of detail, so we can actually design driveways in and out of the sites, even getting into the garages, up or down. Unit developments, really critical. It's even more critical.
And our surveys normally dictate what floor levels they produce, because our surveys show them the landform, and then they can work out how they want the house to sit on the block, whether it's on stilts with lots of stairs, they want it to be
how much to cut into the site?
Yeah, wheelchair friendly, so that means they have to cut into the site and try and make it as flat as possible with a limited amount of stairs. So these surveys do help with that. They also help.
I reckon they're essential.
Yep, and they also help with you trying to work whether you can get sewer and stormwater out when there's a multi-development, to make sure you've got enough fall for your normal falls you need on sewer and stormwater to make them flow correctly.
That's really embarrassing. If in the old days, because I remember when we worked together, we had a couple of jobs, and before the time we had proper surveys, and then they built the house and they couldn't actually fall the sewer to the sewer connection, and had to put a pump in, and and the councils didn't tell us either, and then the blame game happens and it all gets a bit horrible. But nowadays it's the government has set us minimum standard. We follow that, and it's a wonderful thing they've done. And now we have to prove to council that we can do it.
And with our surveys, it's more, due to the planning schemes and requirements of building design, it's more than just your own block now, it's your surrounding houses, how far they are away from your boundary, how tall they are and what shadow they produce certain times of the day with the sun. That helps the designer, so we model those, we show them window locations, because you can tell by the size of the window what normally room it's servicing, so you can see whether it's a major room and they might need to have screens to stop privacy. Also, they may want to complain about a view that they can't see, and with our surveys you can actually model it and exactly know what you're going to see and whether it's going to interfere with their design or not.
And I imagine that would tie in with building design perfectly as well, because there would be minimum standards on how close you can build to other houses, other structures.
Overshadowing, you cast a shadow, and if you're putting a shadow over a lounge room, it has big implications to designs and how you affect someone's backyard, even to where they just don't get sunlight. And the planning schemes say you've got to have a minimum amount of sunlight, and we have to use these to either prove or dispel the actual design. And is it going to work? It's pretty ordinary if they just let you build whatever you like, and then you cover someone's, solar access. They don't get any sunlight to their front yard through the windows. It's pretty ordinary. Yeah, the classic is driveways though. We still see some pretty rubbish driveways done, and it makes it hard for people to get in and out of.
Correct. So a lot of the councils now in Hobart are getting engineered driveways done, and then we have to do an as constructed once they're constructed to make sure they comply. It's normally in areas where they've had problems before, and
those problems are done by people who just did designs and just slapped anything they liked in, and they're dangerous.
So yeah, I've got quite a few photos where unless you've got a full drive, you just can't access certain driveways because of that grade problem. They're either too steep coming out and you bottom out, or they're too steep going in, which doesn't allow the front of the car or the back of the car to get in safely.
So you're scraping them all the way through.
Oh, that's disappointing for all the car lovers out there.
So
it's heartbreaking.
There is a street in Hobart where every driveway's got 4 cars parked down the street and the driveway's empty because they can't get in and out.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, there's a couple of. Remember, there's one at Youngtown.
Correct.
Out there, it was hilarious. Well, actually, you shouldn't say hilarious. I feel sorry for the people that live there. So there's no way you're going to be able to get something in there. So for us, it's really, really important, and we insist on it. But not just getting topography. It's actually getting all the services, everything around it. It's a big picture. But also, Jarrod supplies us with a whole bunch of photos of the site as well. And they fill out a form looking for services and any other obstructions that may be there. If there's cute little rocks sticking out of the surface, the geotech may have picked something up, but they may not note there's boulders poking out. Old trees, they were a favourite of ours.
Correct,
finding a tree that's been cut down, you see a stump there, because that adds other complexities. What other fun stuff have we found on sites? Leftover footings.
Well, yeah, we went the other day to set out a house, and the designer had taken his own levels, and where we set out the house wasn't where it's supposed to be, because the levels in the survey was done in not to a level where they weren't even close to the mark. So then we have to now go back and do a detail survey so they can actually place the shed on a cutting, not where it was shown. But then that's also going to maybe have repercussions of planning again.
Yeah, so basically got to start again, in a way,
Correct.
because they haven't done it properly in the first place.
So now, of course, the builder's ready to go. They were just trying to get the site cut done a little bit better during planning, but they've just got to start. So we've got to go back and do a survey now, and then the design. The house probably won't change, but all the locations and soil testing may have to be done again, and so forth. Bushfire may have to be done again.
It affects everything.
It could be really problematic. I imagine too, for example, if it was a very steep site, then
Which it is. Correct.
potentially you might have to redo the design. Is that correct?
Oh, hello, you might put some retaining walls in,
So
and they haven't allowed for it.
That would add additional cost.
Yep.
Cost, timeframes.
Of course, the wastewater location may have to change because I've moved it now to where the Geotech put the wastewater because they didn't know that.
But it may not work with the contours anymore.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Disaster.
So there's a lot of ramifications when they're ready to start moving soil, but now they're back at the beginning again. So
Yeah. So they're probably about 4 or 5 months behind, potentially. Yeah.
So a super doozy.
Super doozy. Yeah, that's a
unless
nice
somehow
one.
they can work something and just revise things,
But mistakes are going to happen on site. You're compromising on site. So, you know, and then at the end of the day, the people paying the bill aren't getting what they imagined, what they thought they were getting, or they've got to make compromises, pay more money. It's never great. So do it once, do it right, get a really high quality detail survey, you know. It just makes life so much easier for everyone. Because you look at it, doesn't look steep, but it just might have, you know, a normal block might have 1 metre or maybe 2 metres fall over it, and it looks like it's relatively flat. But it affects our design, affects retaining walls, driveways.
I've had very experienced architects and building design question the levels, and then when you look at structures like fences and buildings behind the fence, you can see that it has got that much slope, but to the eye, even with years and years of experience, can make...
It's still deceptive, isn't it? Yeah, it's just deceptive. The numbers don't lie.
I know the designers have mentioned on several occasions that clients have come to them and said, "Oh, I've got a flat block," and then you go and have a look at the block, and they're like, "Well, no, it's not. It's not
goats
flat."
are scared to go on there because it's too steep.
That's right. Yeah. So no, you probably don't have a flat block.
No,
in Tasmania, very unlikely.
especially at Hobart and Launceston were built in valleys.
Yep.
You know.
Very true.
One thing I point out too, boundaries. You know, it's really important. Like for us as designers, we use the title, use all the information that's on the list. But when you've got to get boundary set outs, you know, you've got to use, you know, registered surveyors to adjust things that, you know, mark things out properly.
Correct.
Yeah.
We only compile boundaries. As engineering surveyors, we don't fix boundaries or peg boundaries. We just compile the data from public information that's available from the list and from lands and titles. And we don't. And we always recommend to a designer, if they've got an old title that's either a sketch or so forth, or a balance plan, that they most likely will need a remark survey done if they're building on the boundary or to the prescribed setbacks.
Yep. Or like Launceston and Hobart, you know, we're Hobart's the second oldest city in Australia.
Correct.
And Launceston's the third. And we've got some really old titles, and some have never been touched from when they were done originally. And then you've straight away got to get a registered surveyor involved to figure out the boundaries.
Correct. And a lot of the areas in the middle of town, of course, the older, because they're steep and technology wasn't as good. As surveyors, when we're marking boundaries, we work on a flat plane, so you might have longer block on the slopes than you do the flat on plan. So because it's so steep, it was very hard back in.
With their steel tapes
Correct,
and calculating
yeah.
They were to be fair, old surveyors were pretty amazing, weren't they?
Correct.
Everything was done manually, measuring with steel tapes. They calculated the expansion of
Correct.
the heat. You know?
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty. These guys were amazing.
And depends on how high you were. Sorry, I can't pronounce that. The pressure, that,
Yeah,
as in how high and low you are, it depends on what calculation they
Atris.
use.
What is it? I can't remember it either.
It's all right. It's Friday afternoon. We can still string a sentence together. We're doing very well.
Yeah, true. It's been a tough week. But, you know, there's a lot of... Also with old parts of Launceston and Hobart, but I don't know, it's like the northwest coast. Like we've got really, really old sewer and stormwater tucked away in round old blocks. And we now use a lot of companies to locate pipes.
Correct.
You know, stormwater, sewer, water lines, power, NBN. It could be anything. We get dialed before you digs, so we get a good indication where it might be. It's not overly accurate at times, so we get specialist companies in to actually locate. You know, and sometimes we have to do a thing called potholing, where they get a vacuum truck and they got, because you can't dig because you might break the infrastructure, so they actually use a vacuum truck to dig down to find, it could be a pipe, it could be a cable, it could be anything.
Yes.
You know, and we need to know that, because if a builder goes to site and starts digging away and he cracks a stormwater pipe, a sewer line.
Fibre optic cable.
Oh, there's a winner. Yeah, the fibre optic's a winner. Bit like last year when those clowns, someone broke it once and then they broke the other one in Frankston, wasn't it?
Correct.
Oh, that looked like a bomb went off.
Oh dear.
Well, do you remember that? It left us half of Tassie Tassie in the
that's
lurch.
right. Yeah, it did.
Didn't have NBN for a while.
Yeah, and a lot of times on the old block, you can't find the lock connections, so we use a tractor cam. We find the closest manhole, we drive the tractor cam up the actual pipe.
Remember last time we were talking about connections, running cameras, and then especially in the sewer, and there's bits.
Yes, the bits.
Getting up
the famous bits that go through
bits.
the pipe.
So,
Yes.
so it's always better to go downhill. But
Downhill's a winner. You don't have to fight against the stream.
But from there, we can then see where the connection for the block actually is, where it meets the pipe. Then we can locate that on the top of the ground and show the designer this is where your lock connection is. It's so deep. Then they roughly know which way to head and the height that is, because that then can determine the height of the floor level, depends on minimum grade and how steep the block is.
Also, if there's blockages, so some of the old infrastructure is old earthenware pipes. So that's the clay pipes joined together, and roots and stuff can get in there.
Correct.
So it might be blocked, but by running the cameras, the infrastructure, we can see if there's a problem, we can pass that on. That's in the old block. The new blocks are really good, generally.
Correct, yeah.
Generally, they're very good.
It's mainly when a pipe's been damaged. Also, we're starting to get a lot where they want us to view the sewer and stormwater pipes, take footage of it. So then after you finish your development, you do the same thing. So then council and Taswater are happy you haven't actually broken or damaged or done anything to the existing pipes. It's an insurance policy.
So they watch videos of sewer pipes.
Ew.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
Yeah, what do you do for a living? Yeah.
I hope they get paid a lot.
You just close your eyes and drive.
Yuck. Chunky.
You said it, not us. This is the reality, though. Who'd be a plumber? Fair dinkum. I reckon those guys don't get paid enough sometimes.
Oh, they definitely don't.
Yeah, so other things we should know about general surveying, like the type of machines you use, Jarrod.
Yes.
So I've seen you use some of this cool stuff.
So
very nice toys.
Yeah, now most surveyors can survey by themselves. Most of our total stations are now robotic, so they actually track you around the site. As long as they can see you, they will keep lock on you. And we also use GPS. That's limited to the amount of sky you can see. You need to see 70% of the sky to get an accuracy that is what we determine on our instrument as a quality that's good for a detail survey. Normally,
So lots of tree cover.
Yes.
It's not real flash for GPS.
So if you don't see 70% of the sky, you don't get a lock, and which means that the accuracy is pretty bad. So it's easier to use a total station, which is a tripod with an instrument on it, and then you've got a reflectorless pole. So most of the time our surveys are a combination of the two. Depends on where they are, how close they are to large structures, existing large buildings, trees, hills and so forth.
Also with your total station, this is one thing I learnt early on, where you're able to measure things with the laser.
That's correct. Reflectorless as well. So
Yeah, bounce it off. So remember that time we had to get that pump station out at West Tamer?
correct.
That was 900 odd metres
Yep.
away, and able to ping it off there. So
Wow,
we could
that's a
find
fair
it.
distance.
Yeah, we had to, because it was on a farm.
Correct. So when you buy an instrument, it has got a reflectorless distance. So we've got most of our gears to K to 2K reflectorless now. Very hard to get something that distance away and know exactly what you're shooting. But when you're in the centre of a block, you can normally get all the surrounding houses, bottom of fascias, roof heights, window locations, which mean the neighbours don't need to be notified on that day what's happening, but we are capturing their backyard, as in where their structures are, for their own benefit and the new development's benefit as well. It's not always for the new block's benefit, it's also to help protect their open space or their solar passive area or whatever it is in their block they're trying to produce.
Yeah.
So you said you had to be able to view 70% of the sky. So what happens if you're on, say, a pretty thick, dense bush block? How does that work?
You can't use. So all we do is go on the highway, because our GPSs are connected to a network of bases, and they're on a system which is on MapGrid of Australia and on Australian height datum. So we can then get two points in, maybe out on the road because there's not as much trees there, and then we can then set up on them 2 marks with our total station, and then it knows where it is in the world, and we can move forward from there. So it depends on where you are. It's easier to always use a GPS because you can survey as quick as you can walk. With a total station, you can only survey what you can see from that single point. So a total station is a lot slower.
Okay.
But it can do other cool things.
Yes, correct.
So total station. Remember that time you did that building facade, historic building facade for us? So that was cool one time. We had to do something for planning on a project and had to pick up the building facade. And because you could use the reflectorless, you could pick up every window, certain details, corbels and stuff. And from there, we can then put it into our software, and then we can draw it up. And it's actually accurate on an intricate facade. So it was very cool.
Wow.
And again, you do streetscapes as well. So you
Whole
can
streetscapes,
see how
all right.
the adjoining houses from the street look already, and then you can actually then do a modified streetscape to show people how the new street will look with.
And to the point, we can do full 3D models of streets and stuff with the basic, you're picking up the ridges, the fascias and all that, and so we can actually model the whole street if we need to.
So have you done much of that in Tassie?
I have done the Mercury building and the GPO in Hobart. I've done some work on the corner of Macquarie and, sorry, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's where the old Mercury building is, and the GPO, the post office. That's got a lot of little fret work. So
all that little really intricate details and stuff.
So yeah, they needed to see what the change for the Mercury building was going to impact on the streetscape of Hobart's historic buildings. They didn't want a change too much from old to brand new.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. So yeah, we did. That was quite good. And then we can also take our instruments inside and measure up the inside as well of the building and join the two together. So you've got a model outside and then a model inside as well, which also helps designers with locations of columns and so forth when they're trying
when the building's not square.
Correct, yeah.
So we go measure and like what we normally do, but sometimes you don't realise it's slightly out of square, and that's where the survey...
Because back in the day, they followed the boundaries, so the boundaries were never square, so the buildings...
So all the rooms were out of square.
Mm-hmm. So for a designer, that's hard to work out where that squareness is or isn't, and it's good to know where columns are for penetrations for lifts, stairwells, car park ramps. Otherwise, it's very hard to put two floor plans together on top of each other to see how they reflect.
But now that they've got these 3D scanners and they're going to point cloud, still not 100% convinced of them yet. But
that's
getting there.
With the scanners, they're getting there. Just you've got to really have vacant rooms because it picks up all the furniture and so forth.
Everything.
So it's very hard to get.
It's a bit like when Mr. Bean trying to paint the room by exploding the can of paint, and then you got all that stuff standing. So the difference with some of the things that you do, Jarrod, ident surveys, identification.
No,
you
we
don't do that
because that's for a registered surveyor.
Yep, all that type of stuff.
Yep. We do set out houses. It's normally one dwelling houses for. So that's something that we draw up a site plan, draw up the floor plan, send it back to the builder or the architect to say this is how we've interpreted your plans. Then we get the go-ahead that they're happy with that. Then we go and start setting it out for construction. Depends on who's building it and the type of construction. Depends on how many times we go and visit the site. Most of the times we visit. The first visit's for a bulk cut.
When they dig it out.
Yep. And then the second one's for when they dig the actual footing. So we put the marks back in the ground and the excavator then can dig the footings. That's where the concrete and steel goes. Then we normally go back and then pin the concrete with ramset nails so the bricklayers have got an outsider building as well. So
which you know my view on some of that, I don't. Yeah.
So it's very hard to build a square house. Very easy to build a square house. Very hard to build an outer square house.
Yes, but we've had this discussion because we've noticed in Hobart a lot of builders get set outs, and multiple times we're in Launceston, very few, they do it themselves.
So
Because they have the skill set to do it. They're taught that way to actually set out a house themselves by string lines, or they just get the surveyor in to set out 4 points for the square of the house, and they set up profiles, and then they're in string lines, and they set out the rest of the house themselves too.
Okay.
So it's interesting all over the state. Everyone's a little bit different.
correct. There's 10 ways to build a house. Depends on who trained you.
Yeah, and the skill set you're given. Because, and I've noticed the difference between mainland builders and Tasmanian builders, different skill sets.
And it also depends on how large the firm is. Sometimes the floorman can't be on site all the time, so they need us to keep that quality assurance that things aren't going the wrong way. Because, like I said, easy to build an in-square house, hard when things aren't square because you go and fit your kitchen in and it doesn't fit quite properly.
Architectural masterpieces where there isn't a damn straight wall in the joint.
I know when my house had a new kitchen put in, one end looked lovely. The bench top lined up really nice with the wall. By the other end, I reckon it was like 20 mil out.
Well, it's like this. When we renovated here,
Correct.
we put all the joinery in, and the benches, I think, are 3 metres long out there, and they're out by 65 mil. The front of the building's so out of square, it's ridiculous. And the joinery goes, so we had to adjust it, and that's why we got so many pin boards to cover the gaps
Yeah, right.
because it was out of square.
I don't know how our tiler managed to fix it, but looks fine.
Yeah. That's why you got good tradesmen.
That's right.
They're really, really cool at them. Love what they do. When they can deal with stuff like that, most of us go to water, to try and do that. But the joiners, tilers, they're very clever how they can do it.
Definitely, 100%. It's a skill.
What other surveys?
We do as constructed surveys. That's surveys to show how services have been installed.
So what are services? Which services?
So, community, normally sewer and stormwater.
The ones with the bits in it.
Yes, that's the one. The sewer and stormwater. So what they want to do is council want to sign off to make sure that the new pipes put in are as per design.
And Taswater.
Yes, and Taswater. So they overlay them to make sure that what the designer, the engineer has designed is what's put in on site. And if it has changed, they needed changes from the engineer and new updated plans to show that and approval of that.
Plus of the heights, the set downs of the manholes.
Correct.
Make sure all the benching's done correctly.
So it's more or less to get an ASCON finished and signed off. It means Taswater and council are happy to take on that infrastructure. They're happy that it's.
They own it.
Yeah.
They actually own it at the end of it, and they want it done spot on.
Yeah. So then they've got a standard that they're taking over a standard product, not something that can cause them problems in the future.
That's another bit.
Yeah.
There's lots of things surveying used for.
We also do a lot of because of the bushfire attack level. Driveway lengths and locations are very critical. The length of a driveway and the slope of a driveway.
So put passing bays in.
Passing bays. So when we do a survey, we also ask the client, where's your driveway corridor? Is there existing driveway? So for every, how many metres is it, Frank? You need an overtaking bay?
Oh, now you've got me.
There we go.
I thought it was every 30 metres.
300 metres?
No, I thought it was a lot closer than that.
I'm not sure, but yeah, there's a certain...
So a fire truck can get past a car leaving or something.
And then there's also a minimum slope that you can have on the road, because if a fire truck stops on that slope due to a car coming the other way, it cannot take off. So length, grade and slope, and where they can...
And line of sight.
Yeah, and where they can put overtaking bays. Talking of line of sight is when you create a new driveway coming out of a property, council might also ask how far down each way of the road that you're joining to.
You get a traffic engineer to assist you with that.
Can you see? So I don't want people pulling out of a driveway on a blind corner where the car coming's only got 30 metres to stop doing 100k. It's not possible that's going to happen. So they need to see that the new driveway accesses the road at a spot where it's safe for everyone. So that's also something that, then the traffic engineer, if it's mainly onto a highway where there's 80 or 100 k's, that's normally where that becomes a problem.
We've had some funny stuff happen though on site, haven't we? I remember that one time I rang you. We were just talking on the phone, and was it Tom that was sitting up the road? And you're literally on a driveway, wasn't it, in the bush?
No, I was on a walking track in the bush having a bit of a a breather, talking to Frank, and a snake.
Yeah,
so it's just a
snake and expletive. Went out and popped straight back in, didn't he?
Yeah. So that's a big concern when you've got surveyors that work by themselves. Back when I was training, you always had a surveyor and a technician there, so you've always got someone there. But when you're by yourself, you may be lot 12 up the back of a road. That's not good enough directions to give to someone if you're not.
Well, you might even have phone coverage.
So we have got certain personal safety devices like trackers and e-perks as well, and snake bite kits. So problem with working by yourself, it's all related to you and it's your job, and you can help the quality, but you're by yourself and there's dangers of being by yourself out in the bush.
What about the gate? Sorry, not the gate. The goat that ran off with one of the guy's notebooks.
Yep. So there's
just seen this.
There's always animals on site. Goats are normally the favourite. They like flagging. They like pulling out nails. They like taking things.
Did they do that?
Yep.
Do you want them to take off with one of the notepads?
Yep. So Nick was racing across the paddock.
Was Nick?
Yep.
Oh, no.
The paddock chasing. It was a good. He actually had the phone on, so it was a good laugh when he came back to the office. Cows are always very
interested,
wanting to know what's going on.
I've seen the cow photos.
Yep, and there was another one when I was working for Frank quite a few years ago. I was told to go and survey a block with horses on it out at Relvia, so I went out there and there's horses on the block. I surveyed it. We submitted it to the client and they said, you surveyed the wrong block. So I showed them the photos where the horses were on, and then the owner of the block moved the horses the night before to a different block. Directions are always hard too when you haven't got a street address and you're relying on certain things to survey the
panic
block.
with the horses on.
Of course, the owner moved the horses the night before, so I did survey the paddock with the horses, but it was a neighbouring paddock. So you always get these strange things.
Or get the car bogged. You haven't had that for a while, have you?
No.
You haven't had to rescue many guys yet?
No. So there's always dangers and limitations with working by yourself and going to sites that haven't been developed.
Yeah. Yes, and whatever you do with a brand new subdivision, never drive up on the nature strip.
Correct.
Oh,
brand new nature strip, bit soft, drive tracks in, the foremans get very sensitive.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, we had an unfortunate case.
One time.
Bit of a doozy.
Yeah, it was a bit of a doozy. We fixed her up. It's all right. It's hilarious. When you look back on it, it's funny. Some people react far, where they shouldn't. Yeah, just carried on a little bit. But because sometimes as the designer, you get the call as well. You know, who's this clown that's been on site, done this?
Whoops.
Yeah. I suppose your favourite sites. Your favourite sites are the ones that are full of gorse.
Yeah, no, we're quite lucky. We don't get many gorse or blackberry jobs. So
that's pretty good.
At the moment, I say that, and then next week we'll get
we'll get a few of them,
Anyway, because we don't, at the end of the day, it's normally along fences and at corners, so we're more interested in the topography, where the house is going. So a lot of the times we don't need to such.
I think the lands, the registered surveyors and their guys, because my son works with a couple of these guys, and he's very proud of his slash hooks.
Yep.
He keeps them really sharp. They're a nasty looking thing, and he's got his hack his way through gorse and blackberries, and he comes back, looks like he's been cut up a bit, and being out in the bush, it's all wonderful, but it's not always beer and skittles, is it?
Correct.
Not for the faint-hearted.
No, if you like being outdoors, it's a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, orienteering. A lot of our employees, that's a passion as well of theirs, so it's kind of two and two together.
Yeah, it's cool.
Very good. We might wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming in today, Jarrod.
Not a problem.
So this was Jarrod from Survey Plus. And once again, we've got Frank Geskis joining us.
I'm always here.
He's always here. Until then, we'll see you next week.
Catch you later.
Thanks.
You're listening to the Building Design Primetime Podcast.